Liability insurance, it is part of the overall risk management program for any farm or ranch, but when the operations activity changes, it's typically a good idea to double check to make sure existing coverage is adequate. Roger McEowen with the Washburn School of Law joins us now on What You Need to Know. As always, a pleasure, Roger. Thank you for being here. Good morning to you. So we're talking about a recent case that involved coverage for an animal owned by or in the care of an insured. So tell us about this situation.
Yeah, good to be with you, Suzanne. This is something that's on the mind, I think, of just probably every livestock producer that's out there. What is my risk and my liability risk if I have an animal that gets out and gets hit on a roadway? Well, general rule is that you're not liable. The injured party has to prove that you were negligent somehow. Now, I'm broadly stating that. That's the rule in most states, but this is a state law specific thing. Here, what you had was an individual that had insurance coverage for damage to others caused by an animal that was owned by or in the care of an insured. That was the language in the policy. What he had was after he bought the policy, he then purchased 10 black heifers, penned them inside a barbed wire enclosure behind his home. But the heifers got out on the road, they got hit, there was an injury. The motorist sued and he invoked his insurance coverage and said, well, I should be covered. And the insurance company denied coverage because of a policy exclusion for, and this is the language, bodily injury or property damage arising out of business or farming engaged in by an insured. And the policy defined farming as the operation of an agricultural enterprise, but it didn't define the term enterprise. So that was then put before the court as to whether the policy exclusion excluded coverage for him.
So, wow, explain this again. There are many layers to this, and you think that you're going to be fine. But again, there's the verbiage that really needs to be specific to what they need to know, to what farmers and ranchers need to know.
That's right. And there was that policy language is somewhat unclear. And normally the rule is that unclear policy language is construed against the drafter, against the company in this instance. But the trial court concluded that the insured's purchase and ownership of the cattle constituted an enterprise within the exclusion scope. And the appellate court affirmed that. So he didn't have coverage for the injuries sustained by the motorist.
Wow, that is wild. Not even really probably a lot of farmers or ranchers would even think about that. So clearly the takeaway and what producers need to know here.
Well, I think the takeaway is just what you said in the open, and that is any time that you have a change in your farming activity or your business activity, you better double check with your insurance carrier to make sure you have coverage for that new activity. Here, he didn't have heifers. He bought the heifers, and the court then looked at more of the background facts. Well, how was he filing on his return? How had he conducted his business activity before he bought the heifers? And looking at everything in total, they concluded that this was a farming enterprise and therefore he did not have coverage under his homeowner's policy. So you got to be careful with these things. Be in close contact with your insurance agent and ask questions.
So important to ask those questions. A great lesson. Roger, as always, thank you so much for all of this information. Roger McEowen with the Washburn School of Law.